Is that the term that I keep reading everywhere? Lust? Like once you're in that, that's what's hard to break out of?
No, I mean, lust, I don't know. If I was straight, I might lust for you. I mean, maybe I do anyway. But the point is that, but a bump, but,
I laugh.
but I mean, you're very beautiful. Yeah, you're beautiful. So anyway, I'm not even going to go there. Lust
No, keep going.
is
It's behavior, bitches.
Hey guys, it's Liat. Welcome back to today's episode of Behavior Bitches Podcast. I'm not going to say I'm excited today because I even went out of my way to take a vote from the office. What are other ways to say that I'm excited? So today I am stoked for our guest. And I think a lot of people who are, whether you listen to this podcast because you like human behavior or seeing why people do what they do, or you're a BCBA or in the field of psychology, I think this podcast is going to be very enlightening to you. And also to a lot of us listening as BCBAs, wondering what else can I do with my certification of understanding human behavior and manipulating behavior and manipulating the environment. This could be an area that is so like aligned and parallel exactly to what we do. I'd say as you're listening today, I think you'll realize that too. Without further ado, I'm going to introduce our guest and you'll hear what the topic is. Drum roll, please. Ellen, insert a drum roll. Perfect. Okay. All right. We have Dr. Robert Weiss. Dr. Rob Weiss. More cash. He said I could call him Dr. Rob, Dr. Weiss, whatever works. He's the founding director of Seeking Integrity, LLC, which provides residential and online treatment for sex addiction, trauma, and co-occurring substance use disorders. He is a certified sex addiction therapist and the author of 11 books, including Prodependence and Sex Addiction 101. He's the host of the Sex, Love, and Addiction podcast with more than 3 million downloads. His Psychology Today blog, Sex and Love in the Digital Age, has garnered over 1.8 million reads. Dr. Weiss trains professionals worldwide, serves as an expert witness in state and federal cases, and has held an appointment as an adjunct professor at the University of California, Los Angeles. Welcome to the show, Dr. Rob.
Thanks, Liat. It didn't say I was a nice guy on there, but I'm a reasonably
No,
nice
I think
guy.
I like your energy from the get-go. I used to do the pre-interviews myself for the show, but then sometimes I would do an entire podcast basically and have it not recorded. So now I have Martha do the pre-interviews. And so I have to trust her, yeah, and it's a cool person, great vibe. She's like, look, I didn't get to meet him, but I love the girl I met. And but then you got on today and it was vibes, vibes on fleek. We're happy. I'm so glad you're here.
But you can't work with sex addicts unless you have vibes. Okay. I'm just saying, vibes are what it's all about.
Right. Exactly. All about vibes. I love this. Okay. But just one thing before we get into the juicy, by the way, everyone, we're talking about sex addiction today. Woo. Everyone should be locking in now. But before we do that, just tell me one thing that you've watched recently that made you happy. Even though you said as you get older, you're not as happy, but let's pretend we're positive.
Stranger Things, for sure. I mean, Stranger Things. Is that what you mean? I can talk about the deep pathology, a really good, sex addiction video or whatever. But in terms of fun, definitely that.
Wow, Stranger Things. There's no show
I'm a pop culture junkie.
There's no show I have less interest in than Stranger Things, but
I watched some Bridgerton. If that helps.
Also don't watch that. I only watch documentaries on I'm a serial killer. I'm a sex addict.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a psychopath. I'm a narcissist. I'm a this. I'm in a love triangle and killed my husband, stuff like that. Just light watching for...
Yeah, just cheer yourself up before bed. I get
exactly. That's exactly it. Can you to get started, I want us to talk about what is a sex addiction. I think when we see the word sex addiction out there, everyone, I'm like, okay, Tiger Woods, right? That's the common thought. Can you tell me what a sex addiction is?
Yeah, I think I can tell you what it is and what it isn't.
I love that.
The way I think of sex addiction is kind of the way I think about, it is compulsive behavior that involves sexuality, and it isn't really about sex. It's about the hunt. It's about the chase. It's about the excitement that comes up with the possibilities. It's a lot like any other addiction, which is in many ways, the using happens before you even get there. It's really, let me just talk about what it's not. It's not about what turns you on. So you're into leather, you're into lace, you like it, you don't like it. It's not about that. It's not about how long you have sex. I have sex, for 3 days at a time. I have sex every other day, whatever it is. It's really about the effect of sexual behavior on your life. So if I'm in a relationship and I'm seeing sex workers and I'm getting sexual massages and I am, doing all that kind of stuff, well, obviously it is destroying my relationship, or it will. If I'm a student and I want to do well in school, but I'm looking at porn 5 hours a day. So to me, it's more about the effect of the sexual behavior, just kind of like drinking. You and I might have a drink, but somebody else drinks themselves into driving to trees. So drinking's okay for us, but for alcoholics, not so much.
It's not about just having sex with people. It could like, what are the topographies or the form we could see? Like, I'm assuming someone under the sex addict category could be like,
So let me give you. So
yeah,
first of all, it doesn't have anything to do with smart. I know a lot of men. Well, let me back up and say about 90% of the clients we have that come in are male. I mean, we run a male treatment program, but about 90% of the people who come in for help with this. I think there are a lot of reasons why women don't come in, and we can talk about that in a moment. It's not like they don't struggle with it. But the men that I most often see are in relationships. They're in a crisis around their relationship. Someone found out something, usually a woman, and she's found out, and he said a little more, and she found out, and finally she said, "I'm not going to put up with this anymore, and you're going to have to go get help." The kinds of behaviors we're talking about could be pretty much any sexual behavior, but what I mostly see is compulsive masturbation to porn, compulsive use of porn. See a lot of seeing of sex workers, massage parlors, strip clubs, multiple affairs. But I think what you have to understand is, I've heard lots of guys say, especially when they're dating someone, "Oh, I had a fair amount of sex. I used to look at a little bit of porn." We're talking about hours and hours and hours and hours. We're talking about 30, 60 sex workers, 100 sexual experiences with strangers. So we're not talking about he had an affair, right?
as far as I know, with any addiction, it has to be that it's interrupting your life in some way, like, right, your functioning or
Right.
your ability to engage in like regular activities.
Right, and that's why I mentioned, functionality, and it comes in every area. Like I said, if I'm working and I'm hitting on all the people I work with, it's gonna have profound consequences for work. If I'm in a loving relationship and I'm having affair after affair after affair, and I'm not talking about someone who cheats, I'm talking who has profound problems in their life related to their sexual behavior that is not about what turns them on. It's about the addictive patterns of what that does with your life. And I like to compare it to other addictions because it's really not any different. Like I said, you and I could drink and it's fine. Other people drink themselves into the table and end up driving into trees. So it isn't about the sex per se. Sex is a good thing. We all want to have sex. We want to enjoy sex. It's about the function of sex, because for some people sex is an experiment. For some people it's really hot and they enjoy it. For some people it is relationship oriented. Hopefully those of us in relationships, sex is a biological function. It's healthy. I want people to have sex. It's like an eating disorder. I want you to eat. I want you to enjoy eating. But when your eating behavior is destroying your life and you have either anorexia or you're gaining all this weight, obviously you don't eat the way other people do. And people who have eating disorders are eating for the effect of a feeling. They want to escape something they're feeling. They are upset. They don't know how to kind of, we'd say, regulate themselves. So they might run to food as a way to comfort, as a way to make themselves feel better, even as a form of escape. And of course, if you're sitting around eating gallons of ice cream, then all the rest of it comes like addiction with shame and self-hatred. So it's very much the same as sex addiction. Sex is a healthy biological function, but when it runs off the rails into where, you're getting up in the middle of the night and leaving your partner to look at porn, or you're lying and gaslighting consistently because you don't want your spouse to know that you're having affairs and you're seeing sex workers and um, you're going to massage parlors and all that. So it is the destruction of your life related to sex. Now, somebody might have a bad affair or a difficult relationship, but that's not what we're talking about.
Right. So what you're talking about, which I think is interesting, just looking at it from a behavioral lens, is like we talk about unconditioned reinforcers, and those are the things that like no one has to teach us. Be like, okay, this is valuable to you in life, right? Which is like sleep,
Right.
food, water, oxygen.
Biological functions.
Yep, exactly. And one of them is
Got to eat, got to.
sex, right? We talk about sex. It's the only one that like comes on later in life, but it still is unconditioned. Like
We
no one has to,
don't reproduce if we don't have sex, right?
exactly.
And that is why we're driven. We're driven to eat, we're driven to sleep, we're driven to be sexual, and they're all biological reasons for that.
Which almost seems to me like it almost really makes it more complicated because we're talking about, okay, I mean, any addiction is very difficult. But it's like we're talking about something that is like people engage in this as like we said, biological unconditioned reinforcers. It's like you can't do it, but it's something that people still need to do. Like you still need to eat. You still like,
Right.
you know,
Right.
to,
So
if
you're
you
really
want to
talking about
procreate.
sobriety and what is sobriety, right? So if I'm an alcoholic, I stop drinking and using, right? If I'm a gambler, I stop gambling. So these are not things that necessarily I can get through life and not and do. Like I cannot drink, I cannot gamble, but you want to be sexual and you want to eat. So when you have disorders that are related to naturally occurring functions, it's about defining limits. So I can be sexual, but I have this little circle that says there are things inside of here that I can't do. So I can't call that X or those five X's. I can't go to massage parlor. I can't pay for sex. I can't look at porn. So we define what is the problem, the basic problem that's causing the crisis in someone's life. They can't have that kind of sex. So just like an alcoholic might drink and then lose their sobriety, if I go off and I see a sex worker or look at porn, but that is defined as part of my problem, what I've agreed to as sobriety, then it's really the same. If I do go doing that thing, then I've broken my sobriety. I have to start again.
It's also to think of it, it's like I mean, if let's say masturbation's a big part of it, or, this is like a drug that's actually connected to your body as well, which kind of it's like
Yeah.
because I'm thinking of like different things. Like I know I'm addicted to my phone. Okay. Like in a weird way. I got this new brick device that like, okay, means like you put it in another room, it creates that like friction or that response effort for me to have to go look for it to unlock my phone, to be able to use social media, whatever. It's
Ah,
like this is literally on your body. Like your dick is on your body,
well, that
or
is
it could be for
too.
females too. That's hard.
That's what I hear.
That's hard, no pun intended.
But now, okay, now, yeah, I'm saying like, don't go there with someone who works with sex addicts. So I wouldn't say that you're addicted to the phone because the phone is a thing, right? You're not addicted to a chair. You're not addicted to your television. You're addicted to the relationship between you and that phone. So it is your need to go there, your need to connect, your need to constantly be stimulated. That's the addiction.
Mhm.
It could be to a whole bunch of things. For you, it's the phone because it provides a certain kind of stimulation and distraction that really works for you. And then it reinforces itself. So you do more and more and more. But you've done a smart thing, which is you've said, you know what? And this is so great, right? Is what you talk about. I'm going to put a little something in between me and the phone so that I can't just go pick it up. I have to actually do something, start to think, right, about what I'm going to do before I do it. And that slows down the whole process.
Right, that like
It's
that
the same
we
with
call
sex
that a
addicts.
behavior chain interruption, like, interrupted in the middle there.
I'd call it relapse or, yeah, of course. We call that too. That's great. But what you're doing is you're forcing the person to stop and think. Because as you know, addiction is a rolling downhill kind of thing. The faster it goes, the worse it gets. If you can sometime in some way interrupt it, especially at the beginning, you have the chance to go back and say, okay, I don't want to do that. Like the intellectual brain clicks in. And you're like, oh, right. It isn't about the feeling, it's about what I'm doing, and I need to not do that. But as you know, you take that brick out of your room and you're gonna be on the phone within a short period of time with a lot of challenges in stopping.
Right. So
Am I answering these
no,
questions the way you want,
are
by
you
the way?
kidding? You're answering the questions
No, I'm just
perfectly.
checking.
You are answering them
Okay, I just
perfectly.
want to make
No,
sure.
you answer
Okay,
exactly how you're answering. I might literally repeat back what you're saying just with the ABA terms for anyone studying for this exam. It's a hard exam. So this is like I
sure.
could be learning about something new and studying at the same time.
I think part of the problem with sex addiction is not understood. So when I hear the word sex addict, and just remember the general public, I think about the guy who's sitting in front of the schoolyard waiting to grab my kids. Because it has to do with sex, it has to do with out of control sexual behavior. So everybody goes to that. And sex addicts are not sex offenders. There's a very large difference between a sex addict and a sex offender. And if you ever want to know what a sex offender is, feel free to ask. But we're talking about normative behaviors, masturbation, sexual contact, affairs. It's just that it's run off the rails in a way that it's destroying their lives. Oh, by the way, you know how to define sex?
How?
Because my guys are like, oh, that wasn't sex. So she was groping my dick I'll use that language for you. So she was groping my dick in a bar, but that wasn't sex. Or, I just went down on her, but that wasn't sex or, whatever it is. And they don't get that it isn't just this thing, it's the whole thing. It's not just the porn, it's also the sex worker. It's not just the sex worker, it's all of it. So this is how I tell them to think about sex. I say, you know, anything that you would not do in a public park with children watching is sex. So you're lying in the park, you have a hug, you have a smooch, maybe you might lie on top of someone a little bit, put a blanket over you, some smooching. But if you wouldn't want a kid to walk by and see you, that's sex. And boy, does that clarify it really quickly.
Right, that's a good way to put it. Now, what you're
Thank you.
what you had said, we talk about a lot of times in behavior, like the function of behavior, right? Like it's like what is the purpose of it? Because someone could have sex and someone could be having sex as like with their partner, it's a way they like are intimate and they connect. Or like,
Right.
it's for the purpose of procreating, whatever it
Or
is.
recreation
Exactly.
or fun.
So, but it seems what you're saying is all of this, like these sexual behaviors are in a response class with the same function. And I don't know if it's always that, but like the function being escape or avoidance, which we call negative
Yeah.
reinforcement. Like there's some sort of uncomfortable feeling you're dealing with, or a trigger. You could correct me if I'm
Right.
wrong. And
No,
this
you're absolutely
this
right.
is the behavior that maybe someone has learned or engaged in, which has worked for them before to feel that relief, and then it become, like, cyclical.
Most of the sex addicts I work with knew that they had a problem at 6, knew they had a problem at 9, knew that they had a problem at 15. They did not quite know what it was, but they had some sense that they were already into the behavior in some way. So very early on, it becomes a coping mechanism, if you will. And I love the idea, and this is, I think, it's funny because we're talking about the same thing in different languages, which I think is so interesting because we're really connecting. It's just in different ways we use words. But I have this, there's a concept we use called secondary gain, which means you get something out of it more than what you're actually doing. So I'm going to go back to alcohol because it's just an easy one. You and I may go have a drink because it's social, we relax, maybe we get drunk once in a while, but it's to have fun, it's to relax, whatever that's for. But if I'm an alcoholic, yeah, I look social and I'm having fun, but the real reason I'm drinking is to get drunk. The real reason I'm drinking is to lose myself. The real drinking. So even though I might look like you doing the same thing, you don't have the same second. You have a primary gain, having fun. I want to have fun too, but I want to disappear into the alcohol. So in the moment, the behavior can look very much the same, but what I get out of it and what I'm seeking to get out of it is very different than what you are.
I love that. Like, we talk about that a lot in our classes, like, someone could be like, "Oh, I'm gonna go on the street and wear, like, tassels on my tits for, like, everyone," and
Whatever.
someone's doing it for attention.
Oh, I do that a lot, by the
Yeah.
way.
Ex
Just saying.
I
Not tassels, I'm not into tassels. Maybe it's like sparkly. Anyway, let's not
yeah,
go
yeah,
there.
not judging. Like,
That's a joke, by the way.
you do oh, yeah, right. You can't take that
Yeah, I
personally.
mean, you don't know my sense of humor, but
Mhm.
just oh, do you want to take that
Obviously,
out? I just thought, oh my
you don't
God,
know mine
you
because I
guys
can
go
handle it.
there.
I can handle it. I could bite right back.
Yeah, I know, I hear you.
Okay. So,
You could
anyways,
handle the tassels? Wait, you could handle the
yes,
tassels
I'm
or
I'm the girl
never
doing
mind.
that. I am the girl with the tassels walking around the
Okay,
street.
because I'm
Now,
too old to like swing it around like that. But anyway, let's get serious here. Go
yeah,
ahead.
this is serious. So we talk about it like
It
someone
is
might
serious.
be doing that, but like, what is the function? Someone might be doing it for attention. Someone might be doing it to escape. Like they come from like a religious Catholic household, and in that household, they're like, I wanna get out of this house. I'm gonna go just like stick these tassels on and walk around the street. Someone else might be doing again for like a tangible, like they do this and they make money. So it's like, what is the function of why someone is doing it because it feels good. They love the sensation that it feels when their nipples are out in the cold, whatever it is. But it's interesting how you're
So
putting it.
we have this thing called
Yeah.
an arousal template.
Ooh, tell me about
Right?
this
And that is
arousal
just
template.
what turns you on. So I'm a gay man. My husband and I have been together for 25 years. I just want to say that we are 25 years together last week.
Mazel tov, I
But
love
in any
that.
case, thank you. What turns me on is sex with men. What turns you on might be leather. What turns you on might be lace. What turns you on might be running around with hard nipples and little tassels. But that's what arouses you. It's the template of what arouses you. And so that is different than sex addiction. Sex addiction is not about what turns you on, it's about how you act it out. Someone might, maybe they're into a particular behavior, men, women, whatever it is that they're into that they don't like or they think is a problem, or other people might say, oh, that's whatever it is. But it isn't about the fact that that turns them on, even if the culture says that's bad and that's wrong. Turns you on, it doesn't hurt anyone else, and you enjoy it with your partner, have a good time. But it's the secrecy, it's the lying, it's the hiding, and I think I'll give you a good example. And I don't want to, put too much on men with men, but I'll say this, um,
I want to hear it all. I
let's say
want
I
to
have a
hear like
guy.
examples that you're like, this is how bad it could get, or like this is how extreme it is, or I want to know.
Okay, well, let's do that. So This is a serious thing, and it's a
Also,
sad
but
thing.
sorry,
You know, we
I
joke
don't wanna
about sex,
interrupt,
sex is
but how are you into this? Do you have
oh,
a
you did?
do you I did, but do you have a history? Or is like
I'm a sex addict for sure.
okay.
I started, 12 step recovery in 1985. That's how old I am, and what drove me into those rooms was AIDS. You know, people were dying everywhere, and I think a lot of us were afraid we're gonna die, and plus I could not have a relationship because I remember this is actually funny. I went on a date once. I was so naive and like clueless I was. And I went on this date with this guy. We were like having dinner, whatever. And he said, "What'd you do today?" And I was like, "Oh, well, I went to the adult bookstore and I did a little bit of this. And then I looked at some porn." And he looked at me like horrified. And I'm like, he said, "I don't think I want to go out with you anymore." I'm like, why not? It didn't even occur to me at the time that could be a serious problem or a relationship breaker. But in any case, I entered at that time. And then once I started getting the sense of it, I was like, oh, this is probably people are dying over this. Like I've managed to find a way out of my compulsive behavior, but there are people who they should wear a condom. They know should do this or not, but they're unable to because they're driven to act out sexually. And those are the people. That's sort of how I got to want to help people in that way.
Wow, okay, so you're speaking from I mean, that gives you a lot more street cred on this. I think more than any of
Yeah, I
I
would
think that
say if
gives you
you
more
add it,
street cred than any of the 10 certifications you have.
it's certainly due to the people I work with.
Yeah.
Because what's more important is they understand I'm not looking at them through some kind of microscope. Oh, you're this kind of person. I can say, look, I destroyed my life. I had 800 sexual partners or 1,000. Something like my numbers are pretty high. I am an exemplary sex addict. It's been thank goodness like 30 years since I acted that way, maybe more, probably 35. But between 14 and 24, my whole life was about it. That's all I did everywhere I went. And I think sex addicts, the way I dress for attention, the way I look at people, the whole thing is about being attracting, wanting to be seen, wanting to get that hookup. And boy, when you've got that person in your eyes and when they're looking at you and they're looking at you and you can have them. I can go a room, well, I can, please, this is not a brag, but I could go in a room with 100 people in it and I could say, oh yeah, I can get that person. Oh, I can probably get that person. And I think it is tied to trauma in a lot of ways. We see that
Like, and
deer in
you
the
think you're pretty
headlights.
spot on?
Spot on in terms of, well,
Like, you
you mean, do
probably
I have a
like, is
good,
this, like, you think you can or, like, you have a pretty good, like,
well,
radar?
so I'll give you
Like, that person's DTF.
so I grew up with a bipolar mother, right? So I got home with a lot of extremely problematic behavior and no one talked about it. I could see when mom was starting to go crazy. I could see the little teeny things, the staying up late at night, the talking really fast, and no one else saw it or they paid attention. So I learned very early on to very clearly identify little teeny things. And then when it came to being seductive or engaging or looking for these things, I could begin to say when they look at me, when they do this. So I was already attuned to really closely examining what was going on with that person and reaching conclusions. And by the way, that makes me really good at what I do because I can sit at a room with you and notice, oh, they looked down. Oh, what did they say right there? They said this, but they really meant that. So they say in 12-step programs that, basically you can turn your lemons into lemonade. They call it the promises. And every single skill that I learned acting out all those years and with my mom and all that has turned around into my ability to see what's going on with you, clarify what's going on with you, repeat back to you. And part of it is being an addict, but part of yeah, and a lot of it is being an addict, but a lot of it is, having some professional skills and knowing how to do this, which a lot of therapists don't, by the way.
Which is interesting. I always found it fascinating on, it's like if you find someone, let's say someone who's a heroin addict, like you could drop them in a new city, like they don't know anyone around there, like they will know where to
Oh,
find
yeah.
heroin. Is it the same kind of thing? Like
Oh,
you will
yeah.
figure it out. Like I've never been to North Carolina before, but
Oh,
I will
I'm
find it.
sorry. If you're a sex addict, we've already set it up. I've already gone online. I've already called that person. I've already checked in. I already have them waiting for me when I go there. Or I've gotten a sense of the terrain and where can I go? Or I've got the apps lined up because, in a hotel, I can find 100 people within 3 feet, right? So I know how it works and I know how to make it happen. But to your point earlier, I have to begin to think about that before I leave home, right? So I have to say, do this on the road and I start to set it up when I'm home. So when I'm home, in my world, what I do, I call a sponsor, I call my therapist. I reach out to someone to interrupt that process so that I'm already thinking about, how am I going to get ready for this trip and what am I going to do on this trip and how am I going to be accountable on this trip? Because left to my own devices, I'm off and running.
In behavior, we always talk about behavior in terms of like the antecedent, what is before the behavior, then the behavior, let's say the acting
Right.
out, whether it's masturbating, having sex with prostitutes, whatever it is,
Right.
and then the consequence. And it seems like to me, based on like what all the different things I've read and this like new deep dive I've gone on this, seems like the probably most effective approach you could do is by manipulating the antecedent, like the before, because like once you're already in it, it seems like very hard to get yourself out of, or like you're in a cycle. But like antecedently, what can you do? Um, Whether it's
Well, awareness is the first step because the people I work with are like, oh, how did you end up at the massage parlor? I don't know. I just kind of got there, or I saw it when I was driving by. So we have to take it back a step and back a step. What happened that morning? How were you feeling? When did you first think about it? When did it occur to you wanted to drive that way as opposed to this way? So we are beginning a relapse prevention, we are micro examining every single step it takes antecedents till they get there. And then we're looking at, well, which are the ones you can really recognize that and then what are you going to do? What are you going to do instead? So you find yourself online at work and you can leave early and you find yourself looking at, some kind of connection online, whatever that is. What do you do then? Because at that moment, you may have the rock hasn't gone that far down the hill. At that moment, you may have the ability to stop. It's about the decision you make and the way you act that out. So I could just keep going down the hill, or I could say, oh, yeah, ding, ding, ding. When I'm at work and I'm looking at that, it means I'm in trouble. So I need to do this instead of that. And I don't know about your world, but to me, the process of an action, I can sit day all day long and say, I don't think I should do that, and I don't want to be doing that, and I'm going to go do it. But if I have some accountability, if I have a connection, if I have to go do something, and you know this too, the desire to act out can fade. An hour or two later, I don't necessarily want to do it. So buying that hour for them is precious. And if I can take them away in their brain, knowing where they're going to be headed, but as I said, that's part of the work because I have to be able to help them begin to see, oh, right, it just doesn't happen. I just don't, and here's a good one, end up there, right? There are all kinds of things that happened before, and I need to know what those are. And how do I interrupt that piece? And how do I interrupt that piece? But as well as I do, it's all about awareness in the beginning.
right. And anyone studying for the test, that is like the perfect example of determinism. Determinism is, the one of the foundations of any science, that nothing happens in a vacuum. Like there is always some sort of antecedent, whether it's a trigger, a feeling, a sensation, a smell, whatever it is, which can
Right,
evoke a behavior. Now, something you said
right.
earlier, you mentioned about your mom, growing up with a mom with, was it borderline or bipolar?
She was bipolar. She was
Bipolar.
crazy cuckoo in the hospital 16 times by the time I was an adult, like stuff like that.
So I want to know, is there
Notice how
like,
we can just talk about trauma like, oh, it's the weather. But you spend a lot of time working on it, you get detached from it. But like I can look it on a screen, but I'm not say in it.
is there a certain type of individual who is more like you see has a higher likelihood of falling into this, either like a predisposition or a specific childhood that you see as a common pattern?
Yeah, I do. Almost every single man I work with has the same history in some form or another. And I guess the most basic way I can say it is they become parentified children. So for me, my dad wasn't around. My mom was crazy. Who was going to take care of her? Who was going to make sure he was okay? Who is she going to talk to? Who should she engage with? And I remember mom, what should I wear? Who should I? And for me, and I'm just giving myself as an example, like she would take me to be with some friends, and I would hang up there. What am I do? Mom's sitting there playing cards, or whatever it was. But she would say, "Isn't it my beautiful son? Look how wonderful he is. Look how amazing. Look he can do." But it wasn't about me. It was how it made her feel and how I was a reflection of her. So almost all the men, if not all the men I worked with, have in some way been inadvertently used by a parent. So what they've learned to do is focus on you. I've learned to focus on you, notice what you're doing and how I can maybe get you to pay attention to me, or, if I tend to you, if I'm, there for you, mom, and I tell you what you need to wear, and maybe you'll be more loving toward me. Maybe you'll pay me more attention, but not just because I am, but because of what I can do for you. And that's very different than healthy parenting, where the focus is on me and who I am, and what I need. Parentified parents. And it just produces an enormous amount of fear of intimacy. And by the way, we call this an intimacy disorder. And I was talking to a guy the other night. He has the most loving, wonderful spouse and a great family, and he loves being home and enjoying them. But sitting at the Thanksgiving table, he's on the phone while he's talking to them, and he can't wait to get out of that dinner, and go act out. One of the ways I put it, and I kind of really like this because I thought of it, is my most favorite four-letter word in the language is home. Home. And I think home is where I go when things are difficult. Home sustains me, my partner, my dependency. Where I go when it's a bad day, it's where people say they want to go when they're dying. I want to go home. It's a very important word. My clients don't go toward home, they run away from it. And they're looking for something out there with an affair, with a sex or whatever, is that they will never, ever really get, because what fills you up is home. But home is like what they grew up with. They're going to use, they're going to take advantage of all of this stuff. And they have a way of thinking, which is they compartmentalize. I'd rather put love and intimacy over here and sex over here. And they're living in boxes, and those boxes don't cross. And therefore, the people in this part of the life don't know about that part. This is what's so shocking about the partners. I mean, I have frequently a woman who says, "We have been married for 25 years. And I just looked at his computer and realized that there's this huge amount of porn. And then I went on his phone and I realized he's chatting with this woman, he's chatting with this one. And all of a sudden she realizes he has this huge thing that's been going on their entire relationship. She didn't know anything about it. And how could that possibly be? Because he's very good. By the way, please let me say this to the women who hear things like, "Oh, how could you not know?" Or everybody else knew, or how could you? Of course you wouldn't know. We look at the people we love and we want to hold on to them and we want to see the best in them. The mom whose kid, hopefully not, is out there, shooting kids, and the police come and they say, "You know what your kid done?" They say, "Oh, not my kid." Because they've never been able to look at their kid as being problematic, because they adore their kid and they want their kid to be healthy. So you would be the last person to know affairs, just as in a general way, about the cheating, because you don't want to think that the person who loves you would ever do that to you. And so everybody else may see it, you don't. And you can go many, many, many years. And by the way, spouses have their own issues around neglect or abandonment or whatever that is. And so they stick with us even though it may not be healthy for them.
One of the things that I definitely read is a more than even physical abuse is more like an emotional neglect, and like a place of like a child
Yeah.
being just like not, I don't mean necessarily physically held, but like had a parent
Right.
there, like living a very lonely existence and like
Yes.
trying to figure out the world as
Yes.
a kid, and like how do I like, you know, a lot of the times like we see
How do I get my needs met?
exactly, how do I get my
So I
needs
am
met?
neglected.
How do I handle
If
this
if
big feeling?
well, if and I agree, we're not talking about physical neglect. There are a lot of people who didn't have food on the table, who didn't get the hugs they needed. There are a lot of people who have trauma, and they didn't end up in this particular. A lot of people are sexually abused, and they didn't end up in this particular set of circumstances. To me, the neglect, and I mentioned this before, is about not focusing on the child. The child's needs are constantly subverted to the needs of the parent. So I'm not gonna I never met Tiger Woods, I don't know anything about Tiger Woods, I didn't read his book, but and I haven't treated him, obviously, I can't talk about it, but I'm making something up, so let me make a story up for you. Let's say this is a man who plays really good golf, and his father's obsessed with his golf, and, the boy has to do really well, he's constantly getting, pushed and pushed, but if he doesn't have a good golf game, dad doesn't talk to him. If he doesn't have a good game, he gets furious and walks away. So what the child learns is, okay, I am loved for what I do, not for who I am. And that sense that, by the way, who am I doing it for? I'm doing it to please dad. I'm doing it to make dad feel good, not necessarily because I want to enjoy, or I do enjoy, the spirit of the sport. So again, I'm not talking about that man directly. I don't know anything about him. I don't. But the idea of, it's a great thought in this way, because the idea that I only get validation when I please the parent is neglect. Because what about me? What about my soul, my heart? What about being a child and me needing you to validate me for me as opposed to what I do? And that's the kind of neglect that we're talking about. And sorry, Tiger, I don't know. You're just a little example there.
I think that's just
Although I
like
have to
the
say, when all
common
that
one.
happened, we got really busy.
Oh, you did?
When all that went down, we got really busy. Oh, yeah.
Oh, like
We got
people
really, really
started,
busy
well, you know what?
because it was
He
all over the
essentially did a
press. And everyone's
favor
like,
for the
this is a,
community to create an awareness.
oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. And by the way, let me say one more thing about that. People come to treatment for sex addiction because they were destroyed a relationship, or because they weren't able to follow through with school, or they were hitting on everyone at work, or they're a physician who is hitting on patients. I mean, crossing whatever boundaries it is. And so when people come into treatment, and again, he brings this up for me, everyone says, "Oh my God, they're just going to treatment to get out of their consequences." They just want everyone to feel sorry for them. And the truth is, maybe, and that may be entirely true, but I don't care. What I care about is they get to treatment. I care that they get to a treatment center, because once they're there, once, no matter what their motivation was, that's when I can step in and make a difference. So do people come to treatment to escape and look good? Absolutely. People say, oh my God, they don't really have a problem there. Well, something got them there. Oh, and by the way, Liat, no one has ever shown in my office in 30 years without a sex addiction. No one has ever just casually met in my office like, oh, I might have a sex problem. You come to see me, it's already there.
It's behavior, bitches.
Hey guys, it's your favorite bitch, Liat here. Are you stressing about taking the BCBA or BCABA exam? Feeling like you don't know where to start? You got into this field, you're worried, your program didn't prepare you so much, you're wondering how you're gonna get through grad school, then let alone take this test? Well, let me take that stress on for you. Over here at Study Notes ABA, this is what we do. We eat, breathe, sleep, thinking about the BCBA exam. I've been carrying around my Cooper book for the last 8 years so that you can chill. If you're getting ready to study and wondering what you could be doing, sign up for our live collective. It's 12 weeks, which is done over 24 classes. We meet twice a week. It's taught from actual BCBAs who have been there in your shoes studying for the exam. We make everything relatable, funny. You are actually going to enjoy the study process. And hold me to that. If you're not enjoying it, let me know. I'll be shocked. You get a study group, people who are studying the exact same thing, shared adversity. We could ask all your questions and we take all the notes with you. You are going to have the most beautiful doodles by the end, and your Cooper book will seem way less scary. Are you worried about payment plans? We've got that too. We get what it's like being an RBT in the field. So stop stressing, start getting ready to pass the test, and go to studynotesaba.com/collectives, and we have it all there laid out beautifully for you. So how common is this?
I don't know. And
I
let me
also
tell you
imagine
why.
people aren't necessarily admitting this either, but
Thank you. Not only that, but I can say to 100 people, have you done this sexually, or how often do you have sex? They're not going to talk about it, and they're not going to tell the truth. So, I mean, because of modesty, because whatever it is. So, and plus people are in denial. So I can say to 100 people who drink, do you have a problem? And 100 people say no, but they either don't know they have a problem. So bottom line is sex research is very difficult. The history of sex research has usually been done on white college kids between the ages of 18 and 24 because they would volunteer or they were there. But really, what's going on in the culture, we don't really know in terms of really problematic behavior. But I got to tell you, somebody's keeping all those sex clubs poor. Someone's keeping this business going. And, it's the compulsive, it's the driven person who is definitely contributing to that world in a way that your kind of average healthy person may not be.
a part of this world, what I've seen is a lot of it is the idea that you could live this like totally anonymous life, like get your fix, whatever it is. And I imagine this only got worse with pornography just being everywhere.
Yes.
I was gonna say
It's
like
gotten much worse since digital pornography.
I mean, because I imagine even like, so I'm in the state of Texas. I remember they had this like big thing passing that like, okay, Pornhub wouldn't be here anymore. And no one believes me that I know you're gonna be like, everyone says this. Like I don't know if I'm asexual or what, but like I have like zero interest in watching porn. No, okay, you don't have to believe me, but I'm telling you the truth. But anyways, but I'm sure people could still find it here, right? And so
I think.
I mean, if you have a will, you're gonna find a way. Like you're gonna figure it out. I mean, also, but even if you go on like
By
Instagram,
the way, I have to tell you that I'm sorry to interrupt you. That I think the number 2 road in the country that has the most sex clubs, strip clubs, is the road between San Antonio and Dallas. Just to say it.
oh, isn't there like some famous
And
place? I thought in SA meetings you're
there's
not
a whole
allowed to
bunch of
say.
them.
I thought like in SA meetings when I
And the other one, well, we're not immediate. The other one is between Nashville and Memphis. Just to say it, there are more sex club, more strip club, more adult books, in those particular places. Don't ask me why. Maybe trucker, I don't know, but it's long distance, whatever it is. But that happens to be where the
oh, that's good. Yeah,
numbers
I'll
show
definitely
up.
take a road trip. Um,
You don't even look at porn. What are you gonna do?
what I like looking at people who go into the shops though. Like I am so the type of person who could like just go stand in a sex shop just seeing what people are buying. Like, wow,
Yeah, but
girl,
watch out for the smell.
you could take that. Okay. But I'll act chill, but I'm really in my head like, "Oh my god." That's me. Uh, I like people. I like what
Well,
being weird.
that's thank you, Carrie Bradshaw. Okay, let's keep going.
I think a lot of people think like, "Oh, watching some porn is normal." Like I'm a regular guy. Is that where it
Sure.
typically starts? And I wanna know, like the escalation? Is it like it could stick at porn forever and like masturbating, or
Right.
once you're in, and I've seen the word lust used overly and overly amongst any of the things I've looked up. Can you talk about that and like how it could progress?
Well, some people progress and some people don't. Some people, and I hate, it's so easy to go back to drugs, right? So some people just use Coke. And then some people you go on to use to mix it when they start drinking, they start using meth and they start. So there's escalation in some people. And there's other people who are just doing a lot of Coke. So it really depends on the individual. I think in part what their body can tolerate. I think in part what interests them. I think in part, I wanted to say something about online porn, if
Mhm.
I can,
Please.
because I think this might be useful. So the question always comes up, has digital porn, as it's presented today in all kinds of ways, has that escalated the problem? And so I'm going to go back to the old days because I'm old, right? I mean, I am for sure. And I remember before the internet when people would go to bookstores, when they would go buy magazines. I used to have guys who would have like a stack of magazines like that, and or bigger, and or a garage full, and then they throw them all out, and of course then they'd buy more. But nonetheless, think about what it might have taken in whatever period is, 1992 or whatever, to leave my house, to go to that place, to park my car in the back, to walk in, to buy stuff, which was not cheap, to get it home, to use it. If it was a video, I had to freaking return it. What does it take now to look at porn? So we talk about
It's like the
accessibility.
brick for
What
my
was
phone.
you'll have to say more about that. But yes, in a way it is because you no longer have immediate access. So how the problem is escalated. We have the three A's, which is affordability, accessibility, and anonymity. Thank you. So no one's going to know what I'm looking at online by myself. I mean, they may, who knows, but in my mind, I'm sitting there by myself. So it's completely anonymous if I'm looking at porn, for example. And it doesn't cost anything. I mean, depending on what you're looking at. So anonymity, affordability, and accessibility. How hard is it for me to find porn? So none of those things were in play in the past in the way that they are now. So the easier it is to get, the less expensive it is to get, the more stimulated and varied it is to get, and the less I feel like anyone is actually, seeing me doing what I'm doing. Um, and this is a hugely old example, but I remember watching women on planes, and they would have their reader, and I was thinking, well, they could be reading the Bible or they could be reading 50 Shades, because I don't know, because they're just reading. But if they had a book in their hand, you would. In fact, I remember people putting books inside of books because they want people to see what they're really reading. So the idea that you can deeply involve yourself in some sexual behavior that you can't hide anymore, that you can't. Well, I said it already. Accessibility, anonymity, and affordability. All of that has changed with the internet.
Now, I'm just thinking something like with any drug, the stoner who smokes weed, they gotta smoke a lot of weed to get high, or like someone who drinks alcohol, like they can't just go for a glass of wine, like
Right.
if they wanna get it.
Right.
Does that same principle hold true
Well,
within
absolutely. I
sexual
mean,
addiction?
to a certain degree. So someone can say, well, there's two pieces of that. One is the more I look, the more I want. I need more excitement. Maybe I was just looking at that. Now I'm looking at these things. Now I'm thinking, well, maybe I want to go do them. For some people, they do go do them. So there's absolutely escalation. I do want to say something that's a little different, though, which is some people have an idea that the porn made me do it. In other words, I was never into people being tied up until I saw the porn for people being tied up. And all of a sudden, it's like I looked at so much of that now I'm addicted to it. And the truth is that something has to turn you on for you to enjoy it. My best example is, if I was looking at a lot of porn, and I used to in the day, I'm interested in boobs. It's just not my thing. Breasts are not my thing. Small ones, big ones. I just think about what color would they look best in, or what, how should she prop those up? Because I'm a gay guy. I'm not, because I'm a gay guy, but that's where my head goes. But my point is that I could look at all the porn in the world, and I wouldn't be interested in breasts no matter how many I saw, because it's not in my arousal template. It doesn't turn me on. So if something comes to turn you on by looking at it a lot, it's because it was always there. And by stopping the porn, you can't say, oh, I won't be interested in that, because once you've turned the switch, it is. So it isn't the porn made me do it. It's that the porn may help me realize that there was something that turned me on that I never really knew or never understood or never paid attention to. But once you know about it, it doesn't go away. Now, that's not related to sex addiction in a way, but it is for some people who say, well, I've just stopped looking at the porn, then all this will go away. And, once you open the door, you can't close it. So a little bit about escalation in terms of what might turn someone on they didn't realize turned them on, but now they do. But it's not because they looked at too much porn. It's because they ran into something they didn't know they liked. So in part, escalation is, does what you're doing meet your need to escape? So let's say if I'm looking at porn for hours a day and I'm looking at work and that kind of does it for me, that provides the secondary gain, right? It calms me down, it distracts me. Great, I might not do anything more than that. But if it doesn't meet that need for escape, for validation, for soothing, then I might go to the next thing because I need more of that. And so many people escalate because they're simply not getting out of what they are doing, or as you said, they've done it a lot, and all of a sudden they need more. But there are some people who just keep doing the same thing over and over again, and I would say because that meets the need that they have, that's enough, if you will.
Something that I was reading, I've also gone down like the Reddit channels of this. Like when there's something interesting, I want to know it. So I was going down the Reddit channels and I was seeing someone had written in like my boyfriend, something along the lines of like, something found out that he had like hooked up with a man. He like says he is not, or maybe even the guy was writing it himself. I'm not really sure. I've read so many things, I'm getting all confused. But basically, it's like, I know I'm not gay at all. Like when I'm in such a deep state of lust, I've done things that I wouldn't even ever consider. But like, it's like I'm always looking
Yeah.
for a higher high. Is that something you
Yeah,
could
there's
talk
there's
about?
a great example of that. If you ever see the movie Shame, which is a movie about sex addiction, and really, if you want to understand what it's like inside the mind of someone who's going through that, it's a pretty good example. But there's one scene where the guy's a sex addict. It's late at night. He actually had a fight with somebody, and he's like not wearing good clothes, and he looks all scuffed up. And he goes to his usual, like, I don't know, the place where I want to say house of prostitution. I don't have a word for that. He goes to the place he always used to go, the club, whatever, to have sex with women, and they don't want to let him in because the way he's dressed, because the way he's looked. Well, he then goes to the men's sex club across the street and kind of looks away and gets it because it's more important to escape and just sort of get that feeling than in some ways it is whoever he's with. So his desperation was so great in those moments. Is he gay or is he interested in men? It was easy. It was simple. He could get it. So I'm not saying but I mean, if you have to have you have to have some way to enjoy some of what you're doing. But does it mean that's your dedicated focus? No. And it's not necessarily something you're hiding to yourself or hiding to others. For the sex addict, it's just like, okay, well, and by the way, men are easy. Men are easy. And, if you want to sex with a woman, then you have to take her to dinner, you have to talk to her, you have to see if you get along. When I have sex with a man, you just like, and that's why in many ways the gay culture is a lot more sexuality in terms of men, because men are just like, oh, you look good, let's do it. And women actually want to have relationships, they want to get to know you, and sometimes you have to take them out more than once. And God, what a drag! I just want to have sex. I'm making a point, which is I will do whatever's easiest to get to it and as quickly as I possibly can. And if I can't get this, I'm going to get that. And yeah, a lot of men that I work with, and Seeking Integrity, I have to say, is the name of our treatment program, the work that we do. But I see a lot of men seeking integrity who will finally admit, well, yeah, I actually had sex with a whole bunch of men, but it really doesn't turn me on. I hate myself so much for it because it was there and there wasn't anybody else around and that's just what I did. And then there are people who, they have to come out, they really are homosexual, whatever that is. So yeah, I've said a whole bunch of things. I'm not sure if any of them make
No,
sense, but I said
all of
them.
it's very interesting. I mean, I always, in one of my classes, we talk about, I teach people about the concept of motivating operations, which is like the background information, which changes the value of something in a given moment. So like if you're in prison and you're in prison for
Hmm.
20 years and you're someone who was, maybe you weren't into men before, but now you're in prison and circumstances are like, okay, like I need something, like maybe,
I gotta
someone
be
might,
someone's bitch, right?
yeah, like, all right, you might be bending over, you might be catching, pitching, I don't
You
know,
don't laugh at
whatever.
my jokes. I'm gonna try. Oh, Yvette, I'm trying so hard to make you laugh. You don't laugh at my
No,
jokes.
because you know why?
Um,
It's like,
yeah,
it's so
I
on
get
a
to
level
prison.
that
I
I
got to be
speak that
someone's
I'm like,
bitch.
yeah, totally.
Oh, okay. Like we're alike. Okay.
No, we are.
Let's talk
Things you
about your
say,
sex life
by the way,
later.
I process them so
Okay.
quick and I'm like, love it. So then I just kept it going. But I think you're funny. I like your humor. I I said you're a vibe.
You go, girl.
I want to talk about the cycle, like the sex addiction
Hmm.
cycle, like the shame cycle, and how it works and works like in a true cycle. Can you talk about that?
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, absolutely can. I think, I'm not interested in acting out. It's not on my mind. I have a fight, and I'll give you an example. I fight with my boss. He's very demanding. It reminds me of how my dad used to treat me. I go in the office. my office. I close the door. I'm starting to work, but then I'm starting to think about it. Maybe I want to do it. And so I start looking, and then I get into whatever kind of acting it is, or I lose myself in the porn. And, most often after orgasm, then all of it comes rushing back. I'm like, oh my God, what am I doing here? Why am I doing this? And I shouldn't be doing this. It's kind of like, the drunk who wakes up the next morning, like, what just happened? And then they hate themselves and I'll never do this again. And what was I thinking? And then they get freaked out, like maybe I got a disease or maybe, so there's all the fear and the shame, but that fades. Crisis fades, fear fades. And all of a sudden, it's like, well, I guess it wasn't, look back, well, it wasn't that bad. And, nothing really bad happened. And so you start to kind of normalize it. And then it makes it easy again to say, well, maybe, wow, I have a money issue and that's really stressing me out. You don't think that. You just think, oh my God, I am so stressed out. And I want to go disappear. Or it can be a trauma trigger. So, and I can give you a good story about that, but I'll wait till you ask.
Oh, I want it. I want to hear
So
it.
ask me.
I want to hear the story. Story
So I
time.
had a client who he had good sobriety. He'd not acted out for a while, which means he had followed the plan that he had. He hadn't, might have had sex with a partner, or he might have done something healthy. But for him, he was in that plan of not going out and, let's say, having sex with strangers. And he talked about, before I started working with him, he went into a therapist's office who he saw every week. And she was really, a good therapist. He really depended on her. But that week he had told her that he was going to be out of town and he'd forgotten. So he's sitting there in the waiting room and she's not coming in and she's not coming in. And remember, he depends on her. He leans on her. She means a lot to him as a, a therapist. And then he texts her like, why aren't you here? Why aren't you here? And she says, well, remember we talked about last week. I wasn't, I'm out. And the minute he realized he wasn't going to see her, he thought, I got an hour. You know what I can do with that hour? I can get on the phone. And now, when I backtrack it with him as a therapist, I could say, I think you got abandoned a lot by your mom. I mean, so I wonder if in that moment when you were leaning on this person, you depend on this person, and she didn't show up, it brings up all that stuff. You're not even aware of it. You're where you want to escape. You want to get out. You're aware that, oh my God, now I want to act out. But later in tracking it, it's like, oh yeah, that was the trigger. She wasn't there. I was depending on her being there. I couldn't reach her. She wouldn't respond. And then it's like, oh yeah, I have that hour. I'm not going to see her. No one know where I'll be. So now I can go do this. And in the moment, it just seems like, oh, this will be fun. I've got that free hour. But the reality is, it tracks back to that fear, that very deep down emotion of for him, this particular, that I'm gonna be abandoned, then not be loved, but why isn't she here? And then off he went seeking someone who would make him feel better, who would pay attention to him and all of that.
No, it's just one of these like antecedent trigger events. So like some of the things I saw is like
Right.
common triggers could be like anxiety, shame, loneliness, feeling powerless. I've seen a lot of
But it
like,
can also be a good day
tell me
because
about
I may
that.
not know how to tolerate. It's my birthday and I have a really great time, and I'm really enjoying myself, and this is so great. And I think, oh my God, I just want a little more fun. Or I just, I don't want to let go of this good feeling. So I'll go escalate it. So I think you could say extreme, and for these folks, any extreme emotion, it could be excitement, joy, happiness. And it's like, I just want to spill that over to doing something more fun. Or it could be, I'm depressed, I'm sad, or it could simply be, I don't know why. I just want to go do it. I'm an addict as an addict,
I'm
good
bored.
days, bad days, right. Or boring, especially. By the way, I'll tell you the two biggest triggers for my addicts to want to act out. My addicts think they're my addicts. I've been doing this for 30 years. So, and in fact, if you look up the top 4 or 5 therapists in this field, I think you'd find me.
You did. That's why I
But
reached out.
nonetheless,
I only wanted the best.
thank you. I appreciate that. Well, okay, you got one of them. By the way, my ego I have no problem with my ego, just so you know, no
Good.
problem.
And I'm
And you know
happy
why?
I'm
Because I'm
happy to give
aware,
you ego massages too. I love boosting people's ego.
but I'm aware of it.
Good.
That's what the therapy does. But anyway, I wanted to say something about, I have no idea what, but I want to say this to you. It's very important for you to say this, especially to therapists. People think, well, when you uncover your trauma, when you understand what happened to you, when you really know that it was mom abandoning you and that's what led to, they think, well, when we work on the trauma and you work through it, then you're going to stop acting out or that's going to change. And that's backwards, of course, because I could show someone a video of every single thing that ever happened in their life from beginning to where they are now, but that wouldn't stop their behavior. That wouldn't it doesn't wouldn't do what you and I do, which is teach them what it is and how to stop it and how to change it. It would simply give them a vision for what happened. And so before we start to look at trauma and the issues underlying it, we have to stop the behavior. Because I come to see you for help and I hate myself for what I just did yesterday. How am I going to talk about anything else? And every time I come in, I'm just talking about the acting out. I have to get to a point where that part of my life is stable. And then I could start to look at the more difficult things and underlying things if that's something I choose to do. So this idea that, you get better emotionally and then you stop acting out is backwards. It's you stop acting out and then you get better emotionally. And I think that's a common misunderstanding for both clients and especially for therapists.
Interesting. And you said the 2 most common triggers are, I'm assuming boredom, because I said the word
Oh, thank
boredom.
you. Ooh, you got it. So, well, I'll say it differently. The two most common triggers for sex addicts is going on the road, going and traveling because I'm somewhere where no one knows who I am and I'm anonymous and I have free time and you know whatever that is, and I could disappear into it and no one will know know what I'm doing or whatever. By the way, that's when a lot of spouses find that second credit card with all the hookups and all that because anyway. So travel, and the other one is what I would call boredom is unstructured time alone, which we're married, we have kids, you went away for Thanksgiving to your mom's, I'm home alone. Well, I start looking for, well, I'm home alone, maybe this, maybe that. But what's really going on is, like you said, is there anxiety underneath? I'm alone. Being alone makes me feel anxious. Being alone make my family leaving me makes me feel uncomfortable. I miss them. But it all gets translated before I even think of it is I want to go soothe myself. I want to go feel better. And even the travel, by the way, what I've begun to understand is it isn't just the opportunity. That's the second piece. I'm going out of town, so I can't do this. But the first piece really is I'm going to miss my family. I'm not going to be a stable environment. I'm not going to feel safe. I don't want to travel. I want to be home. I miss being home. All of that is never felt because I move right from, oh, good, they're going to be out of town too. I'm going to go act out. And that's part of the relapse prevention and healing is just them to begin to look at, oh, at least this. And it's what you said. When are you most vulnerable? I'm most vulnerable when I'm alone and I don't have plans. I'm most vulnerable when people go out of town. Those are the first things we need to focus on is what do you do when you're alone? What do you do when you travel? Because as you know, it's about action, not thinking. I can think my way right back into the behavior. And I don't know if you work this way in particular, but no one heals by themselves in my world. No one. You have to have some kind of connection to others who will either hold you accountable or will in meaningful way. You said to me earlier, am I a sex addict? Yes. Do I still act out? No. Will I be an addict all my life? Absolutely. Ask my husband.
You were talking about how, like, the individuals actually, like, potentially not even having the time to process the actual emotion they're feeling. Instead, they're like, "This is an uncomfortable emotion. I'm not actually taking, like, a second to, like, be mindful and, like, be like, what am I actually? Why am I actually feeling this anxiety? Why am I
No,
actually feeling this pit?" Whatever it
no.
is, it's like, maybe I'm feeling sad. Maybe I'm missing my mom. Maybe this is because I felt abandoned as a child and now someone's leaving me again or something along those lines. And
And what
so
about that? Well, it's more than that. It's because, first of all, it doesn't occur to me. That therapist
it's
just
kind of
left and they're not there. It
subconscious, I'm
doesn't
assuming.
occur to me. Oh, it doesn't occur to me that, gee, because they left and I'm feeling lonely, I feel abandoned. I mean, that's unconscious. All I know is I'm sitting in the therapist's office, they're not there. And I think, oh, I've got that hour. Let me go do this. But the underlying stuff is what, we begin to learn about. That's what's pushed it. But you're still going to be in somebody's office that you care about and they're not going to show up. But if you know that that is a trigger for you, then what are you going to do the next time you're in an office and someone doesn't show up? Now that you know the trigger, what are you going to do about it? But understanding it is secondary. And I'll just say this, like if I was an active addict and I'm sitting somewhere and I'm thinking about acting out, it doesn't matter how I'm feeling. I get driven to it, I go do it.
Well, this is what I wanna ask. I wanna ask the difference. Like, okay, so, like, let's say it's a trigger. I understand that, like, the same way, the same kind of thing that would make me wanna go take a Xanax, be like, "I really don't feel like feeling this anymore," you know?
Hmm.
Could be like, "Oh my god, my family's doing this stuff again. I don't even know how to deal with it. It's too
Or
much."
too much social media
Right, all of it.
to say.
Yeah. So, that could be the trigger, but and those are things that are not necessarily sexual. It seems like the
Right.
actual the actual acting out is just the behavior that someone has used as, like, their pacifier to relieve that. Am I getting that right? To have that, like,
Well, that's true in
escape?
some cases, but I think you said something earlier that is true, which is I could be an alcoholic and having a perfectly great day, but then a friend asked me to meet them in a bar. And so then I'm starting to smell it, I'm starting to feel it, and I'm watching people drink and they're laughing, and all of a sudden I feel like drinking. Or back in the day, my association, right? I had my first cigarette when I had a cup of coffee. And so now the hardest time to quit is when I have that cup of coffee. It's association. So yeah, of course there are
Anyone
situations where
studying, we call
I'm
that
gonna
a
look over.
CMO-S, sorry. Anyone studying, that's a condition
Mhm.
motivating operation surrogate. When the item
Right.
itself or that stimulus is, like, acts to give you that same urge, just like even the coffee makes you want to have a cigarette. Okay, keep going. Sorry.
No, so I think that there's, you talk about two motivators. I mean, it's not that, so walking into the sexual environment will trigger me, but I have so much experience at it. I have so many, I know what it is. I know how to do it. I know what it's like to drink and get drunk. I know what it's like to hit on these people and make this happen. And so it's not just being in that environment, it's having used that environment in the past in a way that's very familiar to me. Once I'm in there, I know how to work this, I know how to do this. But the neurobiology, and you cannot forget that. It's the arousal, it's the excitement, and it's not the sexual piece, it's the emotional excitement. And so I do have a way of explaining this, but I don't know if you want me to dive in there.
Dive
What do we
head
do?
first.
So here's a way about to think about it. I used to teach really troubled kids here in California, and we did earthquake drills, right? So, you know, the bell would ring, all the kids would get under their desks, that we're supposed to do, you do that. And that's because why do you keep doing this over and over again? I mean, the kid knows what to do. The reason is when you're at a certain point of arousal, I don't mean sexual arousal, like your heart is pounding, your hands are clammy, your adrenaline is flowing, extreme fear, if you will. You don't know, you start running around in circles.
Right.
It's why we teach firemen, firewomen. Well, here's a good example. Why we might teach a police officer when they're in a situation that is dangerous, they don't just shoot someone. They learn how to tolerate that, how to deal with that situation. So it's the same thing with those kids. I have to drill in them over and over and over again because it comes absolutely automatic. The earth shakes, I go under the desk. It's really the same thing for an addict, which is I'm starting to think about this, and then I get emotionally excited, and then I get adrenaline, and then my heart beats faster, my hands get clammy. So that whole same experience is there. But what I'm saying is those kids, they've lost it. I mean, they're totally caught up in the fear and they're not really thinking clearly. They're emotionally driven. And so it's the same with the addict. The thinking drives the biology, and the biology drives the thinking. And before you know it, I mean, I could sit in a car with a sex addict, and their hands are clammy, their heart is pounding, their pupils are dilated. They're not thinking about, gee, I should be home in 5 hours. They're thinking about how exciting it would be to get into this. In other words, to get tunnel vision. All they can see, the closer they get to it, the harder and harder it is to push it to stay in touch with reality.
And is that the term that I keep reading everywhere? Lust? Like once you're in that's what's hard to break out of?
No, I mean lust. I don't know. If I was straight, I might lust for you. I mean, maybe I do anyway. But the point is that. But a bump. But
I laugh.
but I mean, you're very beautiful. Yeah, you're beautiful. So anyway, I'm not even going to go there. Lust is
No, keep going.
is lust is excitement. Lust is interest. Lust is, this turns me on. It isn't lust. It's the escalation of lust into action. It's like I said,
Which is
it's kind of
perfect
like
because it was the
walking into that.
trigger, which leads us to phase 2, the buildup. Number 1 in the cycle is the trigger. Number 2,
Right.
the buildup, like the actual urge phase, like the itch.
Right.
And that's what you were just talking about.
Well, I'm not sure you got into action. So I start thinking about it, and then I start getting really excited, not sexually, but emotionally. And then I get kind of tunnel vision. I'm
And
not
wait,
really
what does that
thinking
feel
clearly
like?
because
What feelings are you feeling during that time? Like, are you feeling like restless?
well, you mean in the thinking or in the beginning to lose yourself?
Like in the
Um,
buildup, like
you
you're
know,
itching, like you're starting to be like,
yeah,
I'm uncomfortable. Like,
it's so again, it's like I'll go back to the kids. They may be fine, they may be thinking clearly, but when that earthquakes, they're not thinking about, gee, I have to be home at 5 o'clock and mom's gonna be upset and I have to get the homework. They're only thinking about, I gotta save my ass. They go into, and they go running around. So I teach them going. So you kind of lose your mind in some way, or you lose your intellectual mind. You're no longer able to think, I should do this and I should do that, because adrenaline, you disappear. When you're in a panic, that's what happens. In fact, that's sort of a survival mechanism. I used to talk about this. I haven't said it in a long time. That if you think about humanity, um, if a tiger came along, and you were in front of your cave and you looked out in the tiger and you said, oh, what a pretty cat. I'm going to go out and pet him. Well, you didn't make it. You didn't reproduce. But it was the person who said, that cat's scary. I need to stay away from it. That's the person who survived. So
selectionism at
the
its
more you
finest.
begin, yes. And yeah, the people who getting fire live. The people who didn't. But let me go back to the arousal, actually. So, right. So the person who was in such a panic that they said, oh my God, I got away from this cave. They're going to go in there. That's what we're talking about. If I saw my kid run across the street, I wouldn't measure the truck. I wouldn't figure the distance between my kid and the truck. I would just go. I wouldn't think about myself. I wouldn't think, because it would be immediate panic, immediate. And again, you can see in the bio, you can see someone's hands sweat. You can see their heart beating faster. You can see their pupils dilate. Their hearing becomes more acute. They are in a different state of consciousness, which is great, by the way, if there's an earthquake or if your kid's being hit by a truck. But it's not so great if you're losing the ability to think intellectually and make better choices. And this is what you talked about. Because when I'm beginning to lose my mind, if I can just say, oh, what I have a history of is making this call or doing this. Well, when I start making those calls or I start looking at this, I know I'm in trouble. So emotionally, I may not, or intellectually, let's try it this way. Intellectually, I'm not thinking this is a bad thing and I don't want to do it anymore. What we teach people is you may be losing your mind, you may be, adrenaline pumping you, but if you could just learn to notice that you do this thing over and over again, then we can say, when you see yourself doing that, take a different action. We are teaching them what it is and what to do when it happens, rather than like those kids. They're not going to run around the classroom because I've taught them when the earth shakes, go under the desk.
No, it's interesting. We
Does
talk
that make
a lot of
sense?
times working with, like, kids with autism or anyone with any specific thing, we talk about replacement
Hmm.
behaviors, like appropriate or, like,
Right,
differential reinforcement of alternative appropriate behaviors, you know? So, like, or we'll
right.
do something like a DRI, differential reinforcement of incompatible behaviors, like, well, you can't be jacking off if you're both your hands on a Game Boy or, like, looking at different things
Mhm.
like that. Like, we're looking at different things like that that we can engage in that, like, you have these go-to strategies, and by the way, like, masturbation happens to be and sexual behavior something that we see a lot in the autistic community that we work in, because these are a lot of
Mm,
individuals who maybe don't, like, don't have outlets in this way, and so it's like,
right, right.
providing.
Or comfort
Yeah,
themselves. I mean, it
exactly.
feels good, right? And if you're really in a panic, touching yourself, masturbating, it does feel better, and you do feel better.
So,
Um,
that is phase 3 once we're.
by the way, there is a film for women,
Uh-huh.
I should say. If shame is a film for men, there's a film called Nymphomaniac Part One, and it's a Lars von Trier film, and it shows the neglect of a woman with her part with her mother, and how the pain, the anger, the disappointment, and then when she's about 12, you see her masturbating in the bathtub over and over again, and then you see her, getting involved with a 25-year-old because. I understand, when you look at your 8-month-old and you see them touching themselves, you think, oh my God, they're touching themselves. Yeah, what does that mean? My 8-month-old is they're learning that that's pleasurable. They're learning that not in the way that adults do, but they're learning like, oh, that feels good. Oh, there's a part of my body. But if you're going through an extremely stress-based, anxiety-driven childhood, you don't really learn that feels good. You learn that you can disappear into it. That while you're doing that, everything else, I mean, you do learn
We've
really
literally
early on how
paired.
to use sex as a
You've, like, paired
right,
the 2, like, you've conditioned. Like, if I if
right,
I
soothing,
if I put this, like,
right.
thing that was, like, previously a neutral stimulus with, like, this, like, avert like or, like, now it's become, like, you found a way to escape in that moment, and which is negative reinforcement, keeps you doing it more. Negative meaning you're removing yourself from something aversive, and you just keep going.
Mhm,
And now
mhm.
now you're in a
I
cycle.
think about eating disorders. I had a kid who was really neglected, and his parents didn't make a lot of good food, but there were a lot of cookies and candy around the house. And so, when he was alone, when they weren't around, when he didn't have anything to do, there was that food. And so by the time he was, 18 or 20, he was 300 pounds because every time he felt anxious or upset or didn't know what to do, as he had taught himself, if you will, he learned that the food comforted him. That he learned that the food would make him disappear. But there again is the negative consequences. Because now he's unhealthy, he has all this weight, and you have to begin to teach him, oh, when you're anxious and you're upset, or here's another example, don't leave candy in the house. Don't keep cookies and candy in the house. So I have a man who'll say, I don't know. I just got out of bed, and the next thing I know, I'm like in front of the computer, or I'm masturbating in bed, and I don't know how I get there. And so I said to him, you know what? I want you to wear a pair of pajamas that have a string that closes up, and I want you to knot it. And then I want you on another pair of pajamas facing the other way, and I want you to knot it. So by the time you have to undo that knotting and get those pants off, if you will, to go do what you want to do, you can't, you're now saying, oh, I am consciously making this decision rather than, oh, it just happened. So yeah, you're right. I put something that I have to untie that knot before I can masturbate. That makes me conscious. That stops the behavior, or at least I can't say, oh, it just happened. Then it was a decision that I made. I bet that's kind of rings your bell too in terms
That
of the work you do.
totally rings my Pavlovian bell. That is exactly it. Yeah, putting any sort of higher response effort, Like, you are now putting things in there that are like, it's not as easy as when you sleep naked, you know, things
Right.
like that. Okay, now I want to go to, so we said the acting out in that moment, it feels great, whether it's porn, compulsive masturbation, chat room, sexting.
Sure.
And also for
Sex
anyone
feels good.
listening, I just want to add in that, like, I think a lot of people will immediately be like, okay, like everyone masturbates, blah, blah, blah. Like, I mean, to
It's
this,
not about that.
right. And I'm just saying, it's also like, so is it taking away from your life? And also, as behavior analysts, we're always looking at how are we
Right.
measuring something? Like, how much of a day is someone spent doing this, right? Like, are they missing out on life
Right.
because of it? Are they not going to work because they're up all night
Right.
masturbating? Are they like
Right.
injuring themselves potentially?
And that's how I look at addiction too. Like I say, it is how it affects the functionality of your life. And one thing I'll do in the beginning, working with a client, is what's important to you? Well, my family's important to me. Well, dating's important to me. Well, school's important to me. And then we'll sit down and we'll say, well, let's do your sexual behavior. Where is it interfering with those goals that you have? Where is it getting in the way of what's so important to you? By the way, that keeps me out of power struggles. Because if they say, "Oh my God, I love porn," and you're just anti-porn, I'll say, "No, remember how you wanted to do better in school, but all you do is look at the porn? I'm not anti-porn. I'm actually right here for you. I'm telling you, you want to do in school? I'm all behind you. But that may mean you need to change a behavior that you don't want to change. I'm not in a power struggle with them, like you shouldn't do this. I'm saying I want you to have what you want. But if you want what you want, you have to stop this and go there. And that's how I build an alliance with them because I'm joined with them about what's really important with them
I love
to
that
them.
because the more that you like tell someone like don't do this. I mean, me personally, I always like make this one reference to when I was in cross country. I could be running on like a path, fine. Then our coach like comes behind the car somewhere, and as soon as he'd be like, "Nice job, Liat, stride and glide," I'd quit immediately. I was like, "Don't tell me what to do." So like, I like the way that you're
Right.
doing it, not with this power struggle. Literally, I would stop running on the spot as soon as someone told me like keep going. I'd be like, "I'm done."
Yeah, don't tell someone well, especially now if they can't do something because boy, they're gonna say, screw you, I'm gonna do what I want, right? Because there's also kind of personality issues. But if you say to someone, look at what you're losing, look at how important something is to you, and yet you're throwing it away. Then I can say, I don't want you to do that anymore. I want you to enjoy. I want you to celebrate. I want you to. By the way, I think that part of what you and I struggle with at times is that we're doing a different kind of therapy than, we're not so much exploring in the sense of what happened when you were a kid. And we're saying,
Mhm.
what's going on in this moment? We're kind of like doctors. Someone says, I've got cancer, God forbid they have cancer. Okay, this is what you do. You do this, this, and this, and hopefully they get better. Well, we actually have that same kind of knowledge. You're coming to me and saying, I have this problem, and I'm not exploring the problem with you. In this case, I'm saying, okay, you have the problem, do this, do this, do this. And so in that way, I think we do a lot of different work than therapists because we're not so much exploring, but we're actually saying, this is what I recommend you do.
That's exactly behavior analysis. It's not that we're denying that were these early on experiences, like those do matter in different things, but we're not as obsessed with like, what is the title of this? Oh, does this person have, I mean, the only reason we'd need like an autism diagnosis so that their services are paid by insurance. But I don't care
Mhm.
whether it's autism or someone has oppositional defiance disorder. I'm looking at the behavior. I'm looking at the behavior that's happening and like what are we doing antecedently and what are we doing consequently to make changes in that behavior, whether we want to increase it or decrease it. So yeah, we're talking about the same thing.
It's behavior, bitches.
Are you a BCBA now and you are sad because you hate your job? Are you thinking, I worked so effing hard and here I am dreading Monday? Well, you're not the only one. We get that message all the time and we decided to do something about it. Welcome our newest baby, Pair ABA by Study Notes ABA. What is this? Well, we pair you with jobs that you actually don't hate. Imagine that. Imagine going to work on Monday and being excited about it. Imagine working somewhere where you're appreciated, you're paid well, they're doing ethical practice, and you love what you do. Well, that's not impossible because we have formed Pair ABA, where we talk to clinics that we would actually want to work at. We're not going to send you anywhere. We are assessing these clinics to see, are they doing the good work? Are they not telling you one thing and then having you do another thing once you sign on? If you're concerned that you're not happy or you're feeling unsettled where you are, don't settle. Don't settle in relationships. Don't settle in work. Realize your value. Let us help you find a job where you are happy. All you need to do is head on over to pairaba.com. The response effort is low. Fill out the form so we can help you find job options near you. If you're a clinic and you think you're good enough for us to place at, also head over to pairaba.com. And we will see, are you good enough for our badass BCBAs who we protect? Go check it out, pairaba.com. Love you, mean it. All right, so now just onto the...
Oh, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
How much self-promotion? Like I could say, I wrote this book about, or, in a
Please,
treatment center.
as
I don't
much
know
as you
what.
want.
Oh, okay, because
Prostitute yourself. This is
I
a
want to be
safe place to
respectful.
prostitute yourself.
Been there, done that. Don't do that anymore.
This is safe. Don't worry. No one's going to
If I'd
touch
gotten
anything.
$5 for every time, anyway, that's another story.
Oh, you were like a free prostitute. I want to hear all your stories. It's different.
Oh,
Okay. I want to...
no, you don't. But I have fun stories to tell. But I actually have really fun stories to tell. But yeah, I have really fun stories to tell. You want to hear one of my stories?
I want to hear all
Like
of them.
this
You
is a
don't
classic sex
understand.
addict story.
All I want to do is get into like an essay meeting and just sit as a fly on the wall. Like I am just fascinated by people. I want to go into...
The good thing is that you can go online, right? And you go to meetings. You can do it anonymously. It's not like you have to walk into a church basement and
Okay,
sit
so you'll
there,
give me all these
and
details after. It's just I'm
right,
very into it, but I want to talk about the four things. So we talked about
right.
one,
You go.
the trigger, two, the buildup, three, the acting out, and now four, we're at the crash. Like now, this is when you've just
The
maybe you have the
shame.
post-nut clarity. Like when we talk about someone who is like,
Right.
maybe having sex with their partner who is not in an addiction, just like maybe like healthy sex, let's say, they're like, oh, I'm relieved. I feel closer to this person now. I feel connected, assuming I mean, that's not always the case,
Right.
but that doesn't seem what's happening here when you're in the addiction cycle.
Well, it's also, I have to say, you may be having an affair and you're lusting that partner. You can't get away from your family and you can't get away to go. And you do this and you spend the weekend together, you have sex. And then all of a sudden you're thinking, oh, but I should be home. Oh, wait, I feel terrible. I shouldn't have done that. So I think healthy people, affairs aside, I think healthy people do also experience that, especially after orgasm. What did I do? I shouldn't do. Because that whole like neurobiological tie of I'm not paying attention intellectually, I'm totally focused on my emotional excitement and disappearing. Well, once you have an orgasm, that goes away. And so all you're stuck with is the intellectual part, which is, oh, fuck, I shouldn't have done this. And I should be home 3 hours ago. And so, as you said, following the event, if you will, comes the shame, the disappointment, the self-hatred, the hiding, the manipulate, all that stuff to, put it down and away inside of myself and also, hide from other people.
Right. So that we would call that consequence in the antecedent behavior consequence sequence. And that consequence, the shame, guilt, self-disgust, fear of being like, what the hell did I just get myself into? Oh my God, I can't believe I just stuck that water bottle up my ass. Like, what was I thinking?
Right.
I'm sure like there's all types of
Well,
weird.
I'm not going there. No, not me. I'm not saying not me. But again, it's not about what you do.
No, but I'm
Okay. I
saying
want to be really
whatever it is,
clear.
it's like you have
If
a
you like
little
water
bit,
bottles,
right? You have a little bit of
right.
a wake up and you're like, fuck.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah. Again, it's like the alcoholic who wakes up the next morning, they don't know where they are. And it's like, wait a minute, how did I get here? What was I doing? What happened last night? And they didn't feel that way when they were drinking. But the next morning, they're looking back and saying, how could I do this? And I was supposed to be home. And what's wrong with me? And, it's all that shame. But I do want to say something of the cycle. And I don't know if this is your experience, is that
I mean,
if
I don't have
emotional
the experience, but I've just
dysregulation,
read and you know way more than me. So I'm just adding things in and you could tell me I'm wrong, by the way.
that's true. Yeah, that's true. So one of the challenges of the cycle you're talking about is that one of the reasons that I go act out is dysregulation. I'm upset, I'm worried about things, some trauma reaction happens I'm not even aware of, I travel, whatever it is. And so guess what the shame and the self-hatred
It's the
and the
new
how I feel
trigger. It's
about it after.
now it's the antecedent.
It's right. And that's the cycle. It's self-reinforcing. That's my, I have the consequence, I start feeling badly about it, and how do I make myself feel better? So there I am again.
So we have I mean, that is what I find the most interesting. So what is the just going through it one more time behaviorally, let's say the antecedent, you have some sort of anxiety, some sort of discomfort, some sort of boredom, whatever it is.
Which you may not be aware of,
Yeah, you may not be aware
right?
of, right? But if you're like able
Right.
to like and especially if you're in the state of like acting or just in that place, maybe you could see it after if you're able to like maybe
Maybe.
not like
Yeah,
immediately.
for
I'm not saying
sure.
immediately after, maybe like once you've been in therapy for a while and you like explore it with someone potentially. I have no idea.
Yeah, or 12-step programs, which I'm a huge fan of.
And so
But, we can
then
talk
we
about
have the
12-step later.
behavior, whatever you've done. Then you have the consequence, which is meaning like either it's like, oh shit, I have a huge growth on my dick now. What did I just do? Or it could be like, oh my God, 12 hours just went by. I just missed my baby being born, whatever it is. And
Right.
now you're
I didn't
back.
pick up my kids at school.
Mhm.
right?
And all I have is my dick in my hand, or all I have is that I'm with this random
For
prostitute
someone
in bed,
else, right?
right? So
Right.
now that's
I,
the antecedent now to keep going. So you're just in this loop
right.
ongoing.
And I want to add a piece. Yes. So because that's what the cycle is, right? You start to, be dysregulated, which means, emotionally challenged, whatever that is. And again, I'm not thinking, oh, I'm upset about this because that all gets skipped over. I'm having a difficult time, difficult day, and I go right into it'll be fun to have sex. And wouldn't that be great? I don't really know how I got there. I just did. And then I, take whatever time I did to do it. And then of course our reality comes rushing back in and I'm like, I was supposed to be here. And oh my God, I might have a disease. And you pass it on to whoever. And then out of the shame, and you have a little bit of time where you start to feel better, and then you're right back in the behavior. And that is the cycle.
And you're back in it. So that brings me to my next question. How does someone break out of this?
Well, this is where, and I'm not sure if it's true that our paths may vary, because I don't think anybody can do this by themselves. Left to my own devices, no matter how much I know, I will return to it anyway, because it's such a deep psychological process. Like I said, you may know a whole lot, but once you're in that emotional place, your intellect goes out the window. So to me, in my world, the most important thing will help people stay keep from acting out is connection. And it's accountability. So if I say to someone, if I have a sponsor in a 12-step program, and I say, you know what, if I'm going out of town, I'm going to call you when I'm leaving town. And then when I get there, I'm going to check in with you. And then in the evening, when I'm getting ready to bed, in other words, I am accountable to you to check in. And it is that now I'm not alone with it. Now I'm in connection with someone else who has an expectation, who I don't want to let down, whatever that is. I mean, it's not like cheating on a spouse where you just don't think about it. It's actually in recovery or in healing. You are asked to meet certain criteria, but you don't do it by yourself. Because left to my own devices, I'm just going to go back to what I was doing. So accountability is one thought about it. But I also think that we call this an intimacy disorder, right? You are empty inside. You cannot self soothe. And one of the stories I really liked it, and this is sort of sad, but let's say I have a dad who his wife says, I want to go to yoga class tonight and I want you to come early and take care of the kids, right? So he leaves work early and he's like, oh, I got 2 hours free. I'm going to go act out. And he goes, goes to wherever he goes and he has sex or whatever. And then he comes home and he takes a shower and, mom leaves and he plays with the kids and he makes dinner for them. They have a really fun time. And so mom comes home and she walks in and she sees, dad playing with the kids and he made the food. And she says, you know what, honey, you're the best husband I ever wanted. Like, you're so amazing. And he says to himself, if she knew where I was this morning, she wouldn't say those things. So even when the addict has an opportunity to get their needs met for validation and support and being, cheered for, they can't take it in because they have the secret that leaves them to hate themselves no matter what. And so you get emptier and emptier and emptier because you cannot take in the good, because you have the sense of I don't deserve it, right? So it isn't just the fulfillment of feeling better, great stuff. We all want validation. We all want support. We all want to feel important. But I don't even let myself take that in because I know what a piece of shit I am for what I just did. So I'm lonelier and lonelier and emptier and emptier. You can put that in your cycle, in our cycle, the more I do it. That's good, huh? That I like that story because it really talks to how the love is right there. The connection is right there. And I have women to say, how could you love me and do this? If you loved me, you wouldn't do this. And of course, love is over here and sex is over there. And they really have nothing to do with each other in my mind. It has now you understand, you believe, how could I do this if I loved you? But the truth is I was doing this before I ever met you.
Right. And just hearing that, I mean, obviously I like to be the person in the wife situation makes me sad, but also as that individual, like they're holding these secrets, which have got to literally like have physical manifestations, like stomach ulcers, like just like it sounds like a horrible existence to be living with that.
Or you're not functional in the same way, that's for sure.
Like you're, and then it's like anything you're like. Also, if you're doing things for your partner, are you also trying to overcompensate then? Like, because you feel like you have done something wrong. So now it's like, I'm going to buy her roses. I'm going to do this. I'm going to get this gift for her.
I think it's more, well, once you're caught, that's what happens. You get caught, right? I wrote a book and it is my best-selling book and it's called Out of the Doghouse, a relationship saving guide for men caught cheating. Out of the Doghouse, a relationship saving guide for men caught cheating is my most popular book because I've never met a man on the planet who understands what a woman goes through when she's cheated on, or even more important, how to make it better. So guys, we get cheated on, and I'm not saying it isn't women. I'm not saying let's not talk about gender or sexuality or orientation. I'm simply giving examples, and I think about 90% of the people I see are heterosexual men because they get in a lot more trouble, and there are a lot more of you. Ooh, I like the lining of your jacket. I think that's really, really nice. I turn it inside out and wear that
Okay,
side too.
now I know you're gay. Now
Um,
I know you're gay. I just, like, took
it's
my
really
shirt off and you're like,
well.
"I
I'm a
like the
certain. I
lining
have
of
to
your
tell
inner
you,
I like the lining of your inner jacket." Thank you so much.
but there's all kinds of gays. My husband, it's like, whatever. I don't go shop. It doesn't matter to me what I'm wearing. I'm like, honey, maybe you should wear something nicer when you go out. Why? What difference? So we come in all flavors and colors.
I love it.
You just see the more colorful ones among us. But
No,
we
I'm
were talking
joking.
about
I'm
kids.
just
We were
making a
talking about this. We were talking about
generalization.
external reward.
Generalization joke.
Yes, I understand. But that's sort of like saying all the people are this race or all the people, I mean, it's a judgment, a label that you really don't want to put on anyone. But nonetheless,
So, okay,
I
maybe
am
I'll cut the joke
fabulous.
out so that I'm not
I do
canceled.
like the theater.
Ok
Whitney Houston is my, I mean, it just is what it is. It's my, diva. There are certain traits that some of us have. So I wrote this book called Out of the Doghouse, a relationship saving guide for men caught cheating. And it is my best-selling book because, as I said, men have no clue. We really don't understand the depth of pain that a woman goes through when she's cheated on. We just don't get that. And so we think flowers, vacations, buy you something nice, you'll feel better. Or we think, it's been a few weeks. Why are you still angry with me? Like, we don't get it. And so I wrote Doghouse to say, if you love this woman or man, if you love this person and you want to repair the relationship, it doesn't look like this. It looks like compassion, empathy, showing up, not being defensive. And so this goes back to your question earlier, which is, do they know what they're doing so they compensate by buying all of this stuff? They do once they're caught. That's when they're like, oh, sunbeams and moons, I'll take you here and I'll take it. They're trying to like desperately make it better. But in the moment, they're defensive. Why are you always bringing this up? And I'm not cheating on you. When are you going to give me a break? And there you go again. But the one most important say to any woman is trust your gut. Inside of you, no matter what he says, But of course, there's gaslighting, right? That's what gaslighting is. You said I was here, but I was really there. I don't know what you're thinking. So in the moment, I think it's more about being defensive. And the reason I'm defensive is I want to protect my behavior. I want you to believe it's only this, or I want to shift you over there and say, what the fuck are you bothering me for? I never did that because I want to keep doing it. Once I get caught, I'm like, oh my God, bad things are happening. I have to make them feel better in this way and that way. And by the way, I didn't write Doghouse about sex addiction. I wrote it about men who cheat on women and they don't understand how to heal the relationship. If and this is a good sex addict story, once you know about it and once we've gone through this experience, let's say that I always said I was working an hour after I could have been home. So I'm supposed to come at 6, but I come at 7. And I'm supposed to come at 6 and we agree, whatever that is. And I'm always late. And, I say to you, well, I was doing this, I was doing that, but the truth is I'm lying. So I'm in recovery now. It's been 2 years. I no longer do any of this. We're really in a good place. But I come late one night. You are right back there as a partner thinking, he's at it again. I know he's at it again. Now, what someone who doesn't understand what a woman might go through when she's cheated on would say something like, I was at and this may be true, right? This is true. I went to the grocery store. There was a lot of traffic. I was bought what you want. I'm on the way home. Here I am. I cannot believe you're accusing me again. It's been 2 years. That's not going to heal a relationship.
Right.
What heals a relationship is, you know, I can only imagine what you were going through when I came home late. And I probably really disappointed you, and you're probably right back where you were. So it is the empathy and the compassion that men don't get that will actually heal the relationship on some level. By the way, the other thing, just to say it, how do you begin to trust somebody who's done these things to you or has acted out in this way? And the answer is behavior, meaning are they committed to change? Do you see them journaling? Do you see them meditating? Do you see them going to 12-step meetings? Do you see them? Because I don't trust a word an addict says. But what I do trust and can begin to develop trust is they show up when they say they're going to show up. They do what they say they're going to do. They tell the truth when they need to. And I start to think, okay, this person is beginning to change. But promises, forget it.
So that brings me to my question. Is it possible to be in
A
a
lot of questions. What do you mean this question?
no,
Like,
this question that
oh, I'm
I
sorry, but
actually,
that
like,
brings me my
I
question.
had all typed up
My
questions.
next question. My
My
next
next
question. Okay, I
question
just want to clear
that
that up.
let's just say this is a
Thank you.
question that I wrote out while you were talking,
Okay, okay. Thank you for clarity.
so you're welcome. Is it possible to be in a loving,
We
normal
have fun together. I'm so
No,
sorry,
we could
but I'm having fun.
we
This is fun. You're fun.
n trust me, if I am in LA, I'm reaching out to you. We are getting together. I would love to
Okay.
pick your brain and talk, and I would love it. Okay, so
Well, be careful what you say because I've talked to a lot of women. I've given this lecture. I've talked about all this stuff, for hours and hours. And I wrote Sex Addiction 101. I wrote Porn Addiction 101. And they hear all this and they're like, I'm never going to date anyone again. Yeah, sure. So be careful. You want to learn more about it. You may not trust
well,
anyone,
this is the question
especially
I
as
have for
friends.
you
But
that I
anyway,
wrote down because you said be
yes.
clear about it.
Okay.
Is it
I'm so glad.
possible to be in a loving, normal, healthy relationship with someone who is a sex addict or whatever someone wants to call it, compulsive sexual behavior disorder? Someone who is having engaging in any of this?
Okay. Define a healthy relationship and I'll answer your question.
A relationship that you're not setting yourself up to be hurt over and over again for someone to
Well,
really
that's not, I'm
I
sorry, I
guess
interrupted
that's
you.
love in
So what is
general.
a healthy,
Love, you could always be
so
hurt.
define a healthy relationship for me.
I got a thing.
So, uh, so I'll tell you what breaks a relationship. Number one, the backbone of a relationship is trust.
Mhm.
I trust that when you're out in the world, you have my back. You're not going to let me down. You would never do anything that would actually hurt me. Once I know that you have done things that you didn't have my back, that you have done things to hurt me, that you knew, we're going to have a different relationship. And I think the naivete of a couple who, I will always be truthful, I'll always be faithful. On some level, you want to believe that's true. And you do believe that's true. So that violation, once it occurs, the relationship will never be the same because I have lost trust in you. And trust is the backbone of a relationship. As I said, the way I begin to heal a relationship is consistent, honest behavior over time. So when I see you being consistent and honest and showing up, I begin to gain trust in you. But I'll never trust you in the same way because I know what you've done. I know what you're capable of doing, and I know you could do it again. So, what is a healthy relationship to me? One that is intimate. What is intimacy? Oh, this is a good one. So this is important. Probably the most important thing we're going to talk about, I think, in some ways, because people don't really understand. They think intimacy is sexual. They think intimacy is physical. Intimacy is making yourself vulnerable to someone who could hurt you. So if I tell you something that is difficult for me to tell you, that I don't really want to talk about, I'm opening myself up to you, then there's a potential that you could let me down, you could put me down, you could not listen. I have made myself vulnerable to you. We become more intimate because hopefully, I've been vulnerable and you've come closer to me. You say to me, "How was your day?" It was great. Okay, well, we are where we are. You say to me, "How was your day?" And I said, I was really hurt and disappointed by how this happened and that happened. I'm revealing you're going to get closer. This is the number one thing I hear from the women whose husband, and again, I'm using that particular sex, men, women, married, because it's most frequent that I see, but over and over again. So let me say this: at Seeking Integrity, the treatment center, one of the things we do during treatment is we ask a spouse to write a letter about everything they've been through while they were involved with this person. And so, and it's not a happy letter. And you would think that they would say, oh, well, it was this sexual thing and that sexual thing. It isn't. 80% of these letters is you weren't intimate with me. You didn't open up with me. You didn't share with me when I asked you to talk about this thing. You didn't have time. You were busy. We weren't able to build a meaningful relationship. And, men struggle with this anyway because you took risks by opening up to me. And by the way, if you're an addict, you can't. Because to open up to you would be to tell you things that really I would get hurt and I really would upset you. So I don't talk about it. The regaining of trust and intimacy has to do with my vulnerability and my openness to you. And I really, really mean that. If I work with a group of men and they're sitting together and one of them just, is very casual and calm, the guys are like, oh, whatever. And I'll say, and they're in rolling chairs, and I'll say, roll away from him if you feel like he said something meaningful and you feel closer to him, and they roll away because you're good, fine, whatever. And then he says, oh my God, what happened? I'm like, oh, what I'm like, my wife called and this and that, and I can't believe. I say, now how do you feel? And they'll physically move toward him because he has made himself vulnerable and they feel closer to him. So, and in a way, sexuality is intimacy because I am getting naked. How vulnerable could you be? And maybe you reject me, maybe I don't get erection, whatever that is. So just to define it, folks who are listening, intimacy is making yourself emotionally vulnerable to someone with the risk that they may let you down, they may hurt you, but hopefully in a good relationship, they're going to move toward you and you become more intimate. And that is what just put that in a book. Of course, I've already written about it. That's what intimacy is. Got to say it, right? Because people don't know.
I love it.
And sexual intimacy comes out of relationship intimacy, right?
Brilliant.
And sometimes you respond it late, that's fine,
You
but
answered that
different thing.
brilliantly. So my last
Of course
thing,
I did.
because of course you did, and because everyone wants to know, um, on like empirical research, um,
By the way, did you know that when you say everyone wants to know that you stick your hands out like it's the whole world wants to know? I'm
yeah,
just saying because I can see
like
you. There you
everyone,
go.
like the entire world listens to
Everyone,
Behavior
right.
Bitches podcast.
I'm just saying.
Ever,
You're so cute.
I
Okay.
also think I
I'm
needed, like, I
sorry.
think I needed a stretch in the middle also, so it was and like a shimmy. So I was just
No, I
like
got the
doing both.
whole world in my hands. Okay,
That
you're
was
just
it.
shaking those tatas
That's what it was.
with the tassels on them again.
That's
Okay,
exactly
don't
right.
go there. Okay.
So you know.
Yes. What's your question?
A lot of my listeners are gonna be like, "Where's the research? Where's the empirical, like, backing up here?
Right.
Like,
Of
is this
course.
all like" so let's
Right.
can you legitify this at all? Tell me, what is the research? What's the
Okay. Is
backing?
that a word? Let's just talk about that. I do not think, with all due respect, that legitify is a word.
It is, and
You
so
don't have
is
to go out. No, legitify.
legitify as well as
Ah,
legitimately, I say it all the time, like,
that was great. I love you for that. Legitimately. That was even
so,
better.
like, that's
I think that was
legitimately
literally and
horrible.
legitimately.
Yeah, say it.
Okay. That I said that?
No, no,
I'm
no,
so
you
sorry.
could use it in things,
Um,
like, we sell a package here for studying, and it's called Legiterally Everything because it, like, legit literally has everything you'd need to pass the
Right.
test.
That's a wonderful word that let's not go there. You have a question. Let's just talk about it. So I've been doing this for a very long time, right? For 30 years. And I mean treating male sex addicts. I've opened programs all over the world. I've written, a whole bunch of books. We do a whole bunch of online courses at Seeking Integrity for women who've been betrayed, men who are acting out, all that kind of stuff, and paid courses. But in any case, for all these years, when somebody in the media, and there are a lot of media, somebody screws up, whatever it is, and someone says, oh, they're a sex addict. And everyone says, oh, no, that doesn't exist. It's just a joke. It's just an excuse. And for years and years, I had to defend it, right? Oh, no, it's really a thing, whatever. But in 2011, the World Health Organization has a book that gives a number to every single disease and tells you what they are, physical and mental, and explains them. And if you have these symptoms, and it has this number and all of that. We don't have that. We don't use that book. We don't go by that book. We don't do diagnosis. Just how we are. We use something called the DSM. They use something called the ICD. Doesn't matter what it's called. So the World Health Organization in 2011 came out and said, so many people are struggling with porn. So many people are struggling with their sexual relationships. We need to have a name, and we need to call this a disorder. So they did their research, they did their stuff. World Health Organization, they ain't fooling around, and they came up with something called compulsive sexual behavior disorder, CSBD. The United States has yet to, just saying, who runs this, who does a lot of the research? Men. Who looks at sexuality issues? Men. I'm just saying. But anyway, and who knows what they're doing? Who knows what they're doing, what they're defending? But that's another story. So for whatever reason, the United States, Canada, and the UK have never looked at this as a real disorder. So they just haven't. And so I'm living, so now, I can say to yourself, absolutely, we have legitimate research, millions of people all around the world, they've diagnosed it, but not here in this country. So I no longer have to say it doesn't exist. By the way, part of what the culture has changed to me is the media and folks have moved from this couldn't possibly be a thing, you're just making that up. And then they move to, wow, that must be really a problem. And that's happened like the last 10 years. But also, we now have legitimacy. And so, and I wanted to say this to you because I think it's really important. We have a name in the clinical world, the therapy world, for drug and alcohol addiction. And we call it substance abuse disorder, or SUD, substance abuse. No, that's an A. Substance abuse disorder, right? It's SAD. So in any case, that's what we call it. Us mucky mucks, therapists, we write in the chart, we write in their chart, insurance, well, they have a substance use disorder or substance abuse disorder. But you don't go to a 12-step meeting and say, hi, my name is Jamie and I have a substance use disorder. You raise your hand and say, hi, I'm Jamie and I'm alcoholic, or I'm a cocaine addict. So it's the same in my world. This is a game of names, right? Some people, the therapists in particular, will say, and it's fine, they can name it that. And I don't disagree. It is a compulsive sexual behavior disorder. That is what it is. But you don't go to a 12-step meeting and say, oh, hi, I'm Rob and I have a compulsive sexual behavior disorder, right? You go in and say, hi, I'm Rob, I'm a sex addict. So the semantics is what we're talking about. What the Bucky Mucks and the researchers and the therapists who do that work would call it, and they don't like the word addiction, by the way. You heard substance use disorder. You didn't hear drug or alcohol addiction. They don't like that word addiction. So they have all these fancy new words and titles for compulsive sexual behavior, substance use disorder. But your average person says, I'm a sex addict or I'm an alcoholic. So to me, we're talking about the same thing, but we're speaking about it in different languages. And so, yes, legitimacy, absolutely, except the UK, Canada, and the US.
Get with it.
Don't ask me why.
Get
Maybe it
with
was Queen
it.
Victoria. I don't know.
Get with it. US. I mean, I've seen
Well, they're already getting with it. That's the problem. A little less getting with it is what I'm saying.
maybe that's it. But that's literally. I mean, I have so many.
I love this.
I could keep this conversation going 5 ever. However,
Well, invite me back.
and you'll say yes. Do you know how excited I was when you accepted my invitation in the first place? I was like, yes. I was like, the world's in my hands.
And despite getting your name wrong, which I often do because I'm not very good with names,
Liat,
I don't even
like a
remember it.
fiat
Yeah. Oh,
with an
I
S.
know. I got it now. I got it
Okay.
now. We talked about it. But I was excited about being here too. And the reason is because the people who listen to you are not the people who are necessarily listening to a serious clinical, there are all kinds of listeners. And you said I'm popular much more than I thought it would be, is because people really want to hear this. And I do have a podcast called Sex, Love, and Addiction. And the reason I created that podcast was, way back when, each podcast was about every episode of Star Trek. So they would go through episodes, or they were about movies, or about fashion. I thought there must be people who really want to hear serious content, who are really struggling, and here at podcast is the place to do it. So what I really appreciate about you is you are appealing to a much, and it surprised you, but here you are, you appeal to a much broader audience who want to understand these things. And that's what I appreciate about being here. Not that you're not fabulously out, and I don't think you're wonderful, and I love the inside of your jacket. But you are giving an opportunity for people to say, huh, maybe this is a thing. And gee, I didn't realize that. And rather than sort of glossing over it or not understanding it. So, I thank you for inviting me to an experience where maybe there are people who get this who didn't have the opportunity. So
I think the same.
back at you.
Thank you so much. I hope someone listening, either way, if there's someone struggling or maybe they're in a relationship, could realize that there's,
Come find us.
yeah.
In my heart of hearts and in my license, I'm a social worker. And social workers don't just focus on, kids and families and, troubled families. We're really focused on the larger social aspects of problems. And so what I understand, I run a treatment center. We have 8 beds. Please come, send your dude, because men are only, who, has been doing this over and over again, or, if you're the guy who doesn't understand, whatever that is. And we do really, really good treatment. And we have online courses. So if you want to understand, an actual setting with books and workbooks and all. I mean, we're not an alternative to therapy. We're more add to therapy because you don't have time to do that stuff. So we have paid courses, but the majority of what we do is free. So we have 17 free meetings where women who are betrayed, women who are questioning whether they want to be in the relationship or not, men who use drugs and sex, men who are younger. So it was very important to me to set up a whole variety of places where people can go for free. The podcast, Sex, Love, and Addiction. The podcast is free. Hundreds of videos that we've done. And this is what I want you to hear, is that 80% of my work is free for 2 reasons. Maybe some of those people might go to treatment, or maybe some of those people get something free and they'll take a class. Great, appreciate that. But what I'm really interested in my heart of hearts is the people who never make it to therapy. The people who never have the money, the resources, the insurance. So many people don't have the opportunity, the luxury to get those things. And so for me, and I think for you, the chance to give something to all those people who simply aren't going to have the luxury of being able to take time and work on this in a more sophisticated way, for me, that's all it's about. And when I get a letter from somebody, who read Sex Addiction 101 and they live in Japan, and they say, I thought I was sick and unredeemable, and I read what you had to say, and I thought, oh my God, it's not that I have a problem. I'll never meet them. I'll never know them. But for that is my greatest gift.
1,000%.
So there you go.
That reinforcement is like the ultimate high. I completely agree. So what
Good.
people
We're
could
aligned.
find you, I'm gonna go ahead and promote you. Seekingintegrity.com. Okay?
Is everything.
Is everything. And there you'll find your social
It's
media.
the free groups, it's the paid groups, it's the 12-step meetings, it's all the free stuff, it's the podcast. There are connections through there to everything. And I do recommend, and I will say this seriously, they're not expensive. If you really think there's a problem and you're a sex addict, take Sex Addiction 101. Learn what it has to say. Listen to the podcast. If you're a betrayed partner, come to some of the free groups about betrayed partners. There's nothing like being with your own people. And you said why I'm a good sex addiction therapist, because I understand and I've struggled with it. For a woman who's experienced profound betrayal, to be in that room full of 8 to 10 or 20 other women who have too, it's much harder for her to say, well, I wasn't this, and this wasn't a good relationship, and I gained too much weight. And they look around the room and they say, other smart, intelligent women, it happened to them. And they think, okay, it wasn't just me. So, yeah, at Seeking Integrity, I truly believe that I offer as much free stuff as I can. And listen, if you want to come to treatment, oh, there's something else I want to tell you. This is good, and I'll shut up.
Tell me.
Every Monday night, I do a free anonymous talk with a partner. It's sort of like not a game show. It's an interview. It's what we're doing. And every Monday night at 5 o'clock California time, if you go to Seeking Integrity, you'll find it. And I have been sitting there for 8 years with people anonymously coming on. We get 50 people are like, my husband, this, that, or we've been doing that, or I got cheated on, or he gave me a disease, or she keeps and I can't stop. And so if you ever want to talk to me, like literally talk to me, and it's free.
Is that the
Go on Seeking
Q&As that are on
Integrity every
YouTube?
Monday night. Yes, those are
I
the
was
Q&As.
watching some of those.
So we record. Yeah, they're fun, right? I mean, sorry, they're not fun. And I want to say one more thing to you about that. We both have to go. You've heard me crack a lot of jokes. You've heard me be silly. I've done literally hundreds of trainings for thousands of people. And and then there's clients. If I can just make this a little funny, if I can just add a little bit of humor, they can hear it. There's something gets in. If you're so serious and such a difficult, it just gets worse. But if I can, and I did with you, we're talking about serious things. But if I can just put a little bit of that spin on it, you can hear it a lot better. And so that's it for me. And girl, you got it too. You are like humorous, even you're doing it all. You're doing it the way I do it. So clearly you're doing a good job.
Well, I'm trying.
Okay, enough
I'm
about
trying.
me.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Rob, for coming
You're
on.
welcome.
I could see many futures in our
You're glad.
future.
Yeah, not the kind I might, okay. I mean, not the future that we might have had when I was younger, but yes, we'll have a future together.
Oh, you wouldn't
You and me.
catch me in that. I'm like way too
Whatever you are.
Zoloft. Yeah. Dr. Rob, thank you so much for coming on. Everyone listening, you know where you could find Dr. Rob Weiss, seekingintegrity.com. And as for us over here at Behavior Bitches, you know where you can find us. If you're not watching us on YouTube, go watch on YouTube because, as I said, we are really trying to build that channel. And I have to actually get dressed for the interviews and all the things. And don't you want to know what I'm wearing? I have really cool shoes on today. If you watch YouTube, you could see. So go there, subscribe, do all of it. And then go leave us 5-star reviews on Behavior Bitches Podcast on Apple or Spotify. You could leave it on individual episodes. I really that's what keeps me going. And as Dr. Rob was saying earlier, when you hear that something helps someone else, it's like, okay, I want to keep doing this. So please reinforce my behavior. You can find us on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, at Behavior Bitches Podcast, our website, behaviorbitches.com. If you have topics, questions, anything, send it there. And that's all I have for you today. As always, love ya. Mean it.
It's Behavior Bitches.
Hey, Behavior Bitches besties. First of all, thank you so much for taking the time and stopping and watching all of our content on YouTube. We put a lot of effort into putting these podcasts into YouTube. That means I have to get dressed for the day, do my makeup, and actually show up when I used to come in looking completely homeless to record because no one could see my face. This being said, for us to keep doing this, we live for your subscription. So please do not forget to subscribe to our channel and like and leave us comments and love. Live for the love and keep tuning in, and you'll always know when our new episode drops. Love you. Mean it.